Most people remember Spaceballs as pure comedic chaos, oversized helmets, fourth wall gags, and laser battles that mocked everything audiences loved about sci-fi. But behind the absurdity was a careful production, shaped by studio deals, physical endurance, and creative risks most fans never knew about. Some of the film's biggest laughs were born from real limitations, and other moments nearly made it to screen under a completely different identity. Here are 25 secrets behind this beloved parody, starting with the original title that almost changed everything. Number 1. From Planet Moron to Spaceballs. Long before cameras rolled, the film carried a very different name. Mel Brooks originally pitched the project under the working title Planet Moron, a blunt and irreverent label that matched his comedic instincts perfectly. But a problem emerged quickly. The 1985 British comedy Morons from Outer Space had already claimed similar territory, and keeping the name risked direct confusion with a film that had underperformed badly at the box office. Brooks knew the title needed to stand on its own. He wanted something punchy, absurd, and instantly recognizable, a name that could sit comfortably alongside Star Wars without feeling like a cheap imitation. When Spaceballs surfaced during brainstorming sessions, it clicked immediately. The word carried just enough sci-fi flavor while sounding completely ridiculous, which was exactly the tone Brooks had been searching for from the start. The switch wasn't a last-minute panic. It was a deliberate creative choice that shaped the film's entire identity. Brooks understood that a parody lives or dies by how it presents itself, and the right title had to promise both comedy and spectacle before a single frame played. That instinct paid off enormously, giving the film a name that audiences would still be quoting and celebrating decades later. Number 2. The birthday that sparked it all. The idea for the film didn't come from a Hollywood boardroom or a studio pitch meeting. It started at a child's birthday party. Mel Brooks watched his young son Max become completely obsessed with Star Wars, and when the themed celebration took over their entire home, Brooks saw the cultural phenomenon from a father's perspective. The galaxy far, far away had officially invaded his living room. That personal moment planted a creative seed that wouldn't go away. Brooks realized that if Star Wars had become so deeply embedded in everyday family life, it was ripe for the kind of affectionate takedown he had already mastered with Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein. The passion his son showed for lightsabers and space battle told him audiences of all ages were emotionally invested. And emotional investment is exactly what makes parody land. What makes this origin story remarkable is how genuine it was. The project wasn't born from market research or a studio executive chasing the latest trends. It grew from a father watching his kid fall in love with a movie and thinking, I can make fun of that. That authenticity carried through into every scene, giving the finished film a warmth that audiences could feel even beneath all the absurdity. Number 3. A 1934 romance in disguise. Beneath all the sci-fi gags and absurd one-liners, the film quietly borrowed its emotional backbone from a classic Hollywood romance. The 1934 Frank Capra comedy It Happened One Night provided a structural template that most viewers never noticed. A runaway socialite, a rough-around-the-edges male lead, and a journey that forces two completely mismatched people together against their will. Princess Vespa's escape from her royal wedding mirrors the structure almost beat for beat. She flees privilege, encounters a reluctant hero in Lone Starr, and gradually falls for him through shared adversity on the road. Brooks understood that parody works best when it's anchored by real storytelling, and romantic comedy gave him a proven framework audiences would instinctively follow, even if they were laughing too hard to notice the pattern underneath. This hidden layer is part of what separates the movie from lesser parodies that have been forgotten. Instead of stringing together random jokes, Brooks built a genuine narrative arc underneath the comedy. The laughs hit harder because viewers are emotionally engaged without realizing it, and that careful structural planning is exactly why the film still holds up beautifully after all these years. Number 4. The FX were not ILMs. A persistent myth has followed the movie for decades, that Industrial Light and Magic handled its visual effects. In reality, the heavy lifting was done by Apogee Incorporated, a studio founded by John Dykstra, who had previously served as a visual effects supervisor at ILM during the original Star Wars. Dykstra brought top-tier expertise to the production without the famous ILM brand attached to it. Apogee was responsible for the vast majority of the film's spaceship sequences, laser effects, and intricate miniature work. Their craftsmanship gave the parody a visual credibility that elevated the comedy significantly. The gags landed harder because the effects looked genuinely impressive rather than cheap or rushed. ILM's actual contribution was far more limited, most notably confined to the memorable diner scene featuring the chestburster gag that spoofed Alien. The misconception likely persists because audiences naturally assume a Star Wars parody would involve the same effects house. But Brooks chose Apogee deliberately, getting exceptional quality from a team that understood large-scale spectacle without the overhead of Hollywood's most famous effects studio. It was a smart production decision that kept the budget manageable while delivering visuals that still hold up and impress viewers today. Number 5. Lucas approved, with one rule. Before a single scene was filmed, Mel Brooks took an unusual and surprisingly respectful step. He sent the entire script directly to George Lucas. Rather than risk a costly legal battle with the creator of Star Wars, Brooks wanted approval up front and on good terms. Lucas read the material, genuinely laughed, and gave his personal blessing for the parody to move forward. But that approval came with a single firm condition. Lucas told Brooks there could be no Spaceballs merchandise that resembled actual Star Wars products in any way. At the time, Star Wars licensing was a billion-dollar empire, and Lucas had absolutely no intention of letting a parody cut into that carefully built revenue stream. The restriction was clear, non-negotiable, and entirely understandable from a business perspective. What Lucas probably didn't anticipate was how brilliantly Brooks would weaponize that limitation. The no merchandise rule didn't just stay behind the scenes as a quiet restriction, it became creative fuel for one of the film's most iconic moments. That single condition would soon inspire a scene so memorable that it turned a business negotiation into pure comedy gold, and audiences are still quoting it with delight today. Number 6. The princess who feared comedy. Not every cast member jumped at the chance to join the production. Daphne Zuniga was initially hesitant about signing on as Princess Vespa, unsure whether she truly belonged in a Mel Brooks comedy. She worried that his humor was too broad and physical for her particular acting style, and she wasn't confident that her strengths as a dramatic actress would translate into the kind of rapid-fire comedic timing the role seemed to demand from the very beginning. Brooks saw something in her that she didn't yet see in herself. Rather than asking her to learn comedy from scratch, he gave her a single piece of direction that changed everything. Play it completely straight. He told Zuniga to treat every scene as if she were in a serious drama reacting to the chaos around her with total sincerity and commitment. The comedy, he assured her, would come naturally from the contrast between her grounded performance and the sheer absurdity of the world she was in. That approach turned out to be a masterstroke. Zuniga's earnest delivery gave the audience an emotional anchor amid the constant jokes, and her chemistry with Bill Pullman benefited enormously from her refusal to wink at the camera. By playing the princess as a real person trapped in a ridiculous universe, she made every scene funnier than it would have been with a more overtly comedic performer. It was lasting proof that restraint can be just as powerful as exaggeration when it comes to making audiences laugh. Number 7. Lone Starr almost had A-listers. The leading role of Lone Starr nearly went to a much bigger name. Both Tom Hanks and Tom Cruise were seriously considered during early casting discussions, and either actor would have brought massive star power to the production. Studios loved the idea of attaching a proven box office draw to the project, and on paper, both performers had the natural charm and comedic instincts needed to carry a high-profile sci-fi parody. But Mel Brooks ultimately went in a completely different direction. He chose Bill Pullman, an actor who was relatively unknown at the time and didn't carry the cultural baggage of a major Hollywood star. Brooks understood that casting a highly recognizable face in the lead could actually distract from the comedy. Audiences might spend more time watching the celebrity than laughing at the jokes surrounding them. Pullman's anonymity became an unexpected but invaluable asset. That decision quietly shaped the entire tone of the finished film. With Pullman in the role, Lone Starr felt like a genuine everyman rather than a movie star playing dress-up in a costume. The parody worked better because the lead didn't overshadow the material, allowing the jokes and the ensemble cast to share the spotlight evenly. It's a reminder that the boldest casting choice isn't always the biggest name. Sometimes it's the actor nobody sees coming who fits the role perfectly. Number 8. Merchandising was real payback. One of the film's most iconic scenes was born directly from a real business restriction. After George Lucas granted permission for the parody, but banned any merchandise resembling Star Wars products, Mel Brooks didn't sulk over the limitation or let it slow him down. Instead, he turned it into creative ammunition, crafting Yogurt's legendary merchandising speech, a scene that brilliantly mocks Hollywood's obsession with turning every franchise into a product line. The moment works on multiple levels simultaneously. On the surface, it's a hilarious fourth wall break, where a character openly acknowledges the commercial machinery behind blockbuster filmmaking. But underneath, it's Brooks firing a playful shot directly at the industry that told him he couldn't sell toys. By flooding the scene with absurd fake products like the flamethrower, he was satirizing the very culture Lucas was protecting, and doing it with Lucas's own blessing and full approval. What makes the scene endure is how precisely it targeted something audiences instinctively understood. Even in 1987, moviegoers recognized that franchises had become merchandise engines first and stories second. Brooks took a behind-the-scenes frustration and transformed it into a moment that resonated far beyond the parody itself. Decades later, the speech feels even more relevant as franchise merchandising has only grown more aggressive and unavoidable across the entire entertainment landscape. Number 9. Candy's line that wasn't scripted. Some of the best moments in comedy aren't written, they happen in the moment when nobody expects them. During filming, John Candy delivered the now famous line, "That's gonna leave a mark," completely off script, catching the entire crew off guard and immediately earning a genuine laugh from everyone on set. It was pure instinct from a performer who understood comedic timing on a level that simply couldn't be rehearsed or manufactured in advance. Mel Brooks recognized the gold immediately. Rather than sticking rigidly to the screenplay, he kept the improvised line in the final cut without a moment of hesitation. Brooks had always valued spontaneity on his sets, believing that the energy of a genuine surprise often outperformed even the most carefully crafted written joke. Candy's delivery had exactly that kind of effortless, unpredictable quality that no amount of scripting or repeated rehearsal could ever hope to replicate. The moment speaks to something larger about how the film was made. While the script was tightly constructed, Brooks gave his cast room to breathe and experiment within scenes. Candy thrived in that environment, bringing a natural warmth and unpredictability to Barf that elevated the character far beyond what was originally on the page. That single improvised line became one of the most quoted moments in the entire movie, a testament to the fact that the best comedy often lives in the unplanned spaces between takes. Number 10. Dark Helmet was even bigger. The oversized helmet that became Rick Moranis' signature look in the film was originally designed to be even more extreme. Early costume concepts pushed the proportions much further, creating a headpiece so massive that it would have completely dwarfed the actor beneath it. The visual absurdity was entirely intentional. The bigger the helmet, the funnier the contrast with Moranis' small frame and neurotic energy hiding underneath. But practical concerns forced the design team to scale things back considerably. The initial versions made basic movement nearly impossible, and Moranis struggled to hit his marks, deliver lines clearly, and interact with other actors while wearing something that constantly threw off his balance. The comedy couldn't work if the performer was physically fighting the costume in every single take, so the helmet was gradually reduced to a size that still looked wonderfully ridiculous but allowed Moranis to actually perform with confidence. The final version struck a perfect balance between visual comedy and on-set functionality. It was still absurdly large, impossible to take seriously for even a second, but Moranis could move freely, gesture naturally, and deliver his rapid-fire dialogue without the headpiece working against him. That careful calibration is easy to overlook, but it's exactly the kind of behind-the-scenes craftsmanship that made the character truly iconic, rather than just a one-note visual gag that would have worn thin after a single scene. Number 11. The doll scene was pure ad-lib. One of the film's most memorable sequences wasn't carefully scripted. It was largely invented on the spot. Rick Moranis took the basic concept of Dark Helmet, playing with action figures, and turned it into a fully realized comedic performance through improvisation. The scene called for the villain to be caught in a private moment of childish behavior, but the specific dialogue and physical comedy that made it legendary came almost entirely from Moranis himself during filming. Mel Brooks gave him the freedom to explore the moment without rigid boundaries. Rather than dictating every beat, Brooks set up the camera and let Moranis run with whatever felt natural. Take after take! Moranis refined the rhythm of the scene, adjusting his voice, timing, and gestures until the comedy hit its peak. Brooks watched from behind the monitor, stepping in only when he felt a particular take had nailed something worth keeping in the final cut. The result became one of the most quoted and beloved sequences in the entire movie. What audiences see on screen feels effortless and spontaneous, which is precisely why it works so well. The scene captures Dark Helmet at his most vulnerable and absurd, revealing the insecure person hiding beneath all that oversized armor. It's a masterclass in what happens when a gifted comedic actor is given space to play, and it remains a highlight that fans return to again and again with equal delight. Number 12. The sequel that never launched. Few movie jokes have aged quite as strangely as the film's own sequel tease. The title Spaceballs 3, The Search for Spaceballs 2, was a throwaway gag designed to mock Hollywood's obsession with franchise numbering, but behind the scenes, a real continuation was actually discussed. After the movie performed modestly in theaters but exploded on home video, MGM began exploring the possibility of turning the parody into an ongoing series. Conversations between the studio and Mel Brooks went back and forth for years without ever gaining real traction. The challenge was partly creative and partly financial. Brooks wasn't interested in making a sequel just for the sake of cashing in, and the budget required to match the original's production quality kept rising. Without a script that genuinely excited everyone involved, the project lingered in development without ever reaching the point of actual production. The franchise eventually resurfaced in other forms, but a true theatrical sequel never materialized. fans spent decades hoping for an announcement that never came, and Brooks occasionally teased the idea in interviews without committing to anything concrete. The irony is impossible to miss. A film that openly mocked Hollywood's sequel obsession became the subject of its own never-ending sequel speculation. It's the kind of meta-twist that feels perfectly fitting for a movie built entirely on self-aware humor and fourth-wall destruction. Number 13. Barf's suit was no lightweight. Behind John Candy's lovable performance as Barf was a costume that created more challenges than most audiences ever realized. The character's signature look included oversized ears that could move and react during scenes, giving the half-man, half-dog a lifelike quality that elevated the comedy. But that mechanical ear system required a powered backpack rig that Candy had to wear underneath his costume throughout every single day of filming. Over the years, exaggerated claims have placed the suit's weight at 30 pounds or more, but accounts from the actual builders suggest the rig was closer to 7 pounds in reality. That's far less dramatic than the rumors, but it still created genuine mobility issues for an actor who needed to run, jump, and deliver physical comedy, while carrying extra gear strapped to his body. The weight wasn't the real problem. It was the restricted range of movement and the constant awareness that sudden motions could damage the delicate mechanical components inside. Despite those physical limitations, Candy never let the costume slow down his performance. He brought boundless energy and warmth to every scene, making Barf one of the most endearing characters in the entire film. Crew members later recalled how Candy would crack jokes between takes even while dealing with the discomfort, keeping morale high on set through sheer force of personality. The fact that his performance feels so effortless and natural on screen is a testament to his dedication and professionalism as a performer who refused to let technical obstacles diminish his work. Number 14. The desert that ruined continuity. Filming exterior scenes for the movie meant heading to the Yuma Desert in Arizona, where the vast open landscape provided the perfect alien planet backdrop. The endless stretches of sand looked spectacular on camera, giving the production a scope that rivaled the films it was parodying. But that pristine environment came with a frustrating and completely unavoidable problem that plagued the crew throughout the entire desert shoot. Every time a take ended, the sand was covered in footprints. Actors, camera operators, and crew members left visible tracks everywhere they moved, and those marks showed up clearly on film. Between each take, dedicated crew members had to painstakingly smooth and rake the surface back to its original untouched state. What should have been straightforward outdoor shooting turned into a time-consuming exercise in resetting the landscape over and over again before cameras could roll once more. The desert wind occasionally helped by naturally covering some tracks, but just as often it created entirely new continuity problems by shifting the dunes between setups. Simple scenes that might have taken a few hours on a soundstage stretched into full-day productions under the blazing Arizona sun. It was the kind of invisible production challenge that audiences never think about. The pristine sandy landscapes that appear so effortlessly barren on screen were actually the result of constant, exhausting manual labor happening just outside the frame between every single take. Number 15. Sunglasses on the spaceship set. The interior spaceship scenes required extensive blue screen work, and the lighting needed to make those effects convincing was brutally intense. Powerful lamps flooded the set with a harsh, unnatural glow that bounced off every reflective surface, creating conditions that were physically uncomfortable for anyone standing under them for extended periods of time. The cast and crew quickly discovered that working in this artificial environment came with unexpected side effects. Between takes, actors reportedly reached for tinted glasses to give their eyes a break from the relentless brightness. The image of performers in full sci-fi costumes casually wearing sunglasses on a spaceship set became one of the production's most surreal behind-the-scenes details. It was a striking visual contrast. Characters meant to look heroic or menacing suddenly resembled vacationers squinting through an exceptionally bright afternoon at the beach. The precaution was entirely practical, driven by genuine concerns about eye strain and fatigue during long shooting days. But the anecdote also reveals just how artificial the so-called space environment really was. What audiences saw as the dark, dramatic interior of a starship was actually one of the most blindingly bright sets anyone had ever worked on. It's a fitting irony for a film built entirely on the gap between appearance and reality. Even the production itself was a kind of visual illusion that looked nothing like what ended up on screen. Number 16. Filmed on Oz's historic stage. The production didn't just occupy any ordinary soundstage. It set up shop on one of the most legendary pieces of real estate in Hollywood history. MGM's Stage 15 had been home to countless classic productions over the decades, but its most famous resident was The Wizard of Oz, the 1939 masterpiece that defined movie magic for generations. Filming a sci-fi parody on the same floor where Dorothy once followed the yellow brick road added an unexpected layer of poetic irony to the entire production. Bill Pullman later recalled noticing remnants of old set markings still visible on the stage floor during filming. Faded lines and indicators from productions long past served as quiet reminders that the space had witnessed some of cinema's most iconic moments. For a cast working on a comedy that lovingly mocked Hollywood's grandest traditions, there was something fitting about standing on ground that represented the very history they were playfully tearing apart. The overlap between the parody and its surroundings wasn't lost on the crew either. Working on a stage with that kind of legacy created a subtle sense of reverence beneath all the daily chaos of comedy filmmaking. It was a reminder that even the most irreverent productions exist within a larger creative lineage. The same walls that once housed one of cinema's most beloved fantasies were now echoing with jokes about oversized helmets and ridiculous villains. And somehow, that felt exactly right for a film that understood Hollywood history well enough to mock it with genuine affection. Number 17. Dot Matrix got a new voice. The robotic companion audiences hear in the finished film isn't the voice that was originally recorded on set. Lorene Yarnell, who physically performed the role of Dot Matrix in the demanding costume, also provided the character's voice during principal photography. But when Mel Brooks reviewed the footage in post-production, he felt the vocal performance didn't match the sharp comedic energy he envisioned for the character. Brooks made the difficult decision to replace Yarnell's voice entirely. He brought in Joan Rivers, whose rapid-fire delivery and biting comedic style were a perfect match for the sarcastic robot companion. Rivers recorded all of her dialogue separately in a studio, never once wearing the costume or experiencing the physical demands of the role. Her performance was layered over Yarnell's physical work, creating a character that was essentially a collaboration between two very different performers who never actually worked together on set. The change significantly transformed Dot Matrix's personality in the final cut. Yarnell's original vocal approach had been more restrained and mechanical, while Rivers brought an unmistakable sharpness and attitude that gave the robot genuine scene-stealing energy. It was a bold post-production choice that could have felt jarring, but Brooks's instinct proved correct. Rivers' voice became inseparable from the character in audiences' minds. Few viewers ever realized they were watching one woman's body language paired with another woman's voice, a seamless illusion that only worked because both performers were exceptional at their craft. Number 18. Gold makeup made Brooks ill. Playing the wise and mysterious Yogurt meant Mel Brooks had to spend hours in a makeup chair being covered head to toe in metallic gold paint. The transformation looked spectacular on camera, giving the character an otherworldly appearance that perfectly suited his role as the film's mystical guide. But behind that golden shimmer was a physically miserable experience that Brooks endured throughout every scene he appeared in as the character. The metallic paint caused a genuine allergic reaction that affected Brooks during and after filming. His skin became irritated and inflamed, requiring ongoing medical treatment between shooting days. Unlike a typical costume that could be removed quickly at the end of a scene, the gold makeup took considerable time to apply and even longer to remove safely without causing further damage. Each session in the chair became something Brooks quietly dreaded, even as he continued directing the rest of the production simultaneously. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on anyone involved. The man responsible for orchestrating every joke and pratfall in the film was personally suffering real physical discomfort for the sake of a single character. Brooks never let the reaction slow down production or diminish his performance as Yogurt, delivering every line with the same warmth and comedic precision regardless of how his skin felt underneath all that paint. It was a quiet act of dedication that most audiences would never know about. The comedy guru enduring genuine pain to make sure every golden moment landed perfectly on screen. Number 19. Ludicrous speed became real. A throwaway gag about going beyond light speed took on an entirely unexpected second life. Decades after the film's release, the concept of ludicrous speed was written as a simple escalation joke, a parody of Star Wars hyperspace that pushed the absurdity one step further by giving it the most ridiculous name imaginable. Nobody involved in the production could have predicted that the phrase would eventually leave the world of fiction entirely and enter real-world technology. In 2015, Elon Musk announced that Tesla vehicles would feature a performance setting called Ludicrous Mode, a direct and openly acknowledged reference to the film. The feature allowed certain Tesla models to achieve dramatically faster acceleration times, and the naming choice immediately resonated with fans who recognized the connection. Musk later pushed the reference even further by introducing Plaid Mode, continuing the tradition of borrowing comedic terminology for genuine engineering milestones. The journey from parody punchline to automotive branding is one of the strangest legacy stories in comedy history. A joke that existed purely to mock science fiction conventions ended up becoming a real selling point for one of the world's most valuable car companies. It speaks to how deeply the film embedded itself in popular culture. Its language didn't just survive in movie quotes and internet references, it crossed over into an entirely different industry. Few comedies can claim their dialogue literally ended up powering real machines on actual roads around the world. Number 20. Pizza. The Hutt was real food. Creating one of the film's most grotesque characters required a costume approach that was as disgusting to build as it was to watch on screen. The production team constructed Pizza the Hutt using a combination of pancake batter, melted cheese, and actual pizza toppings layered over a structural base. The result was a visually repulsive puppet that looked exactly like a living, breathing mass of melted food, which, in many ways, it literally was. The practical reality of wearing and operating the costume was deeply unpleasant. The combination of real food materials created an overwhelming smell on set that only worsened under the hot studio lights. The weight and texture of the layered ingredients made movement difficult and uncomfortable for the performer inside, and the costume deteriorated steadily throughout each day of filming as the organic materials broke down naturally under the heat. Conditions became so unbearable that one performer reportedly declined to return for additional reshoots after experiencing the costume firsthand. The physical toll of spending hours encased in warm, decaying food materials was more than most people were willing to endure twice. It's a detail that transforms what appears to be a simple visual gag into a story of genuine production hardship. The few minutes of screen time that Pizza the Hutt occupies in the finished film represent hours of deeply uncomfortable work that push the boundaries of what performers were willing to physically endure for the sake of a single comedic character. Number 21. The robot actress nearly collapsed. While Joan Rivers recorded her lines in the comfort of a studio booth, the physical performer inside the dot matrix costume endured conditions that were anything but comfortable. Lorene Yarnell, a gifted mime and physical actress, spent long hours sealed inside a rigid robotic suit that offered almost no ventilation. The costume looked impressive on camera, but it trapped heat like an oven, turning every scene into an endurance test that pushed Yarnell closer to her physical limits with each passing take. Reports from the set describe Yarnell sweating heavily and struggling to breathe properly inside the enclosed suit during extended shooting days. The combination of hot studio lights, minimal airflow, and the sheer weight of the costume created conditions that would challenge even the most physically resilient performer. Crew members kept a close watch on her between takes, ready to help remove sections of the suit quickly if she showed signs of serious distress or overheating during the demanding production schedule. What makes Yarnell's contribution so remarkable is how invisible her suffering is in the finished film. Dot Matrix moves with personality and precision on screen, never once suggesting that the person inside was fighting exhaustion and discomfort with every step. Yarnell's background as a trained mime gave her the physical discipline to maintain the character's movements even under extreme conditions. It's one of the most overlooked performances in the entire production. A woman whose face never appears on screen delivering physical work that required extraordinary stamina, all while someone else would eventually receive credit for the character's voice and comedic identity. Number 22. The cup mistake became canon. A common myth claims that Mel Brooks enforced a strict ban on styrofoam cups anywhere near the set. The reality is far more entertaining than that tidy legend. Crew members repeatedly left their coffee cups sitting on tables, counters, and set pieces between takes, a routine problem on virtually any film production. Rather than getting frustrated by the constant oversight, Brooks saw an opportunity hiding inside the annoyance. Instead of halting production to clear every stray cup, Brooks decided to lean into the mistake and make it part of the film itself. In one scene, Dark Helmet can be seen casually drinking from a cup on camera, turning what would normally be a continuity error into a deliberate visual gag. It was a classic Brooks move, taking something that went wrong and finding a way to make it funny rather than fighting against it endlessly behind the scenes. The decision perfectly captures the spirit of the entire production. Rather than obsessing over perfection, Brooks embraced the chaos and turned real-world messiness into comedy that audiences would enjoy. The cup moment is easy to miss on a first viewing, but once noticed, it becomes yet another layer of self-aware humor baked into the film. It's a small detail that reveals a larger philosophy. When life hands you a production mistake, don't waste energy fixing it if you can get a laugh out of it instead. That willingness to adapt on the fly gave the movie a loose, spontaneous energy that carefully polished comedies often struggle to achieve. Number 23. The ship's hidden bumper sticker. One of the film's cleverest sight gags requires patience that most first-time viewers simply don't have. When Spaceball 1 makes its grand entrance, the camera slowly pans across the enormous vessel in a shot that deliberately stretches on far longer than comfortable. The extended reveal is itself a joke, a parody of the iconic Star Wars opening where the Star Destroyer passes endlessly overhead. But hidden at the very end of that long, deliberate pan is a small detail that rewards anyone paying close enough attention to the screen. A bumper sticker on the back of the massive ship reads, "We break for nobody," a perfectly absurd touch that transforms an already funny visual gag into something even more layered and rewarding. The joke works because it takes the most imposing object in the film and undercuts it with something as mundane and ordinary as a novelty bumper sticker, the kind of cheap humor you'd find on the back of a family station wagon during a long summer road trip. The gag has become one of the most celebrated hidden details among dedicated fans of the movie. It's the kind of blink and you miss it moment that encourages repeat viewings, giving audiences a reason to watch familiar scenes more carefully each time. Brooks understood that comedy works on different levels for different viewers, and tucking small visual jokes into larger set pieces ensured that the film kept revealing new surprises long after the initial theatrical experience. It's a testament to how much thought went into even the smallest background details of a production that most people assumed was nothing more than gleeful, unplanned chaos. Number 24. The cartoon spin-off lives on. Most fans associate the franchise exclusively with the original film, but the story didn't end there. In 2008, more than 2 decades after the movie's theatrical release, an animated series brought the universe back to life for a new generation of viewers. The show was produced with Mel Brooks' involvement and featured him reprising his roles as both Yogurt and President Scroob, lending the spin-off a direct connection to the source material that gave it credibility among longtime fans. The animated continuation ran for 13 episodes before being quietly canceled, never achieving the cultural impact of the film that inspired it. The show attempted to expand the world beyond what the original movie had established, introducing new characters and storylines while maintaining the irreverent comedic tone that defined the franchise. Critical reception was mixed, with some viewers appreciating the effort to keep the spirit alive and others feeling the humor didn't translate as effectively into animated form. Despite its brief run, the series stands as proof of just how enduring the original film's appeal had become over the decades. The fact that a studio was willing to invest in reviving the property more than 20 years after its release speaks volumes about the loyalty of its fan base. Few viewers today even remember the animated chapter of the franchise existed, but for those who do, it represents a curious footnote in the history of a comedy that refused to stay quietly in the past. The show may not have lasted long, but its existence confirmed what fans had always known. The appetite for this particular brand of absurdity never truly went away. Number 25. From modest hit to cult classic. The film's theatrical run in the summer of 1987 was respectable, but far from spectacular. Opening against stiff competition, it earned solid numbers without ever dominating the box office in the way that Brooks's earlier classics like Blazing Saddles had managed. Critics were divided. Some praised the comedic energy and performances, while others felt the parody relied too heavily on easy targets. By traditional Hollywood standards, the movie was a moderate success that seemed destined to fade from conversation relatively quickly. But something unexpected happened once the film reached home video. VHS rentals and purchases introduced the comedy to audiences who had skipped it in theaters, and cable television replays exposed it to entirely new demographics over the following years. Families discovered it together, teenagers quoted it endlessly at school, and the film's densely packed jokes rewarded the kind of repeat viewing that home media made effortless. Each rewatch revealed another hidden gag or background detail that kept audiences coming back for more. That slow-burning growth transformed a modest theatrical performer into one of the most quoted comedies of its generation. Lines like "May the Schwartz be with you" and "I'm surrounded by idiots" became permanent fixtures in popular culture, referenced everywhere from casual conversations to other films and television shows. The movie didn't need a blockbuster opening weekend to secure its legacy. It built one gradually, viewer by viewer, quote by quote, until it became the kind of film that entire generations could recite from memory. What began as an underperforming summer release quietly became something far more valuable, a comedy that people genuinely loved and refused to let go of. Spaceballs may look like effortless chaos, but behind every joke was a production shaped by real negotiations, physical endurance, and creative problem solving. From a discarded working title to George Lucas's Single Condition, from allergic reactions to gold paint to a costume built with actual food, the stories behind the camera are just as entertaining as anything that made it to the screen. Every secret reveals a team that cared deeply about getting the comedy right, even when it meant enduring real discomfort along the way. Decades later, the film remains proof that great parody requires more than just punchlines. It demands craftsmanship, timing, and a willingness to turn every limitation into an opportunity. Its quotes live permanently in popular culture. Its influence reaches from animation to automotive engineering, and its fanbase has only grown stronger with each passing year. If you enjoyed uncovering these secrets, hit the like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the films you love. Tell us in the comments, which Spaceballs secret surprised you the most?